Hello, my name is Jo Stafford and I am the co-founder and director of Print to the People. In my previous video I talked a bit about my career path and how I got to set up Print to the People with Vicky Johnson. In this video I'm going to talk more about how Print to the People works as an organisation and also share some tips on funding and other ways of raising money. So Print to the People is an artist-led social enterprise dedicated to the production and promotion of traditional printmaking processes. So we do screen print, lino, letterpress, etching, all those different processes in our studio here in Norwich, and we run open access facilities, which means different people can come in and use the space to make their own work, and we also run courses, workshops and events throughout the year. So when Vicky and I set up Print to the People, we didn't really know what we wanted it to be, but in terms of an organisational structure, but we did know kind of what we didn't want it to be. So we didn't want this to be a board where, you know, if you wanted a decision to get made, the item had to get put on an agenda, it would get discussed at a meeting, and it would basically take a long while for any decisions to get made. You know, we wanted to be able to say yes and no to things really quickly. And we wanted to be like flexible and be able to evolve rather than like putting ourselves in a box about, you know, this is what we do. So we felt that kind of ruled out being a charity to begin with. And as we were juggling, like running the studios with having full-time jobs, we didn't really want anything that involved too much like extra paperwork. So that kind of ruled out being a co-op or a CIC, which is a community interest company. So by default almost, we ended up being a social enterprise. As an unincorporated social enterprise, there are some pros and cons. The pros being there's not that much paperwork, the cons being we are limited to the amount of funding we can apply for. But being this way has suited the Print to the People up until this point, but now we're looking to go to the next stage of our development. We are looking at becoming incorporated, so registering as a limited company and probably becoming a charity. So that's something we're working on at the minute. And although I might think, oh, why don't we just do this from the start? I think it's good we're doing it now because we have much more of a sense of who Print to the People is as an organisation and where we want to go. So now's the right time to do that for us. Right from the beginning, we also knew we didn't want to rely on funding completely to operate. When we were setting up Print to the People, it was around about the same time the Arts Council was cutting lots of its funding. So there were like local organisations who were having to close because they just couldn't exist without funding. So we didn't want that to be us. And also, when I did my internship at London Print Studio, it was the same time they were filling out a massive funding application to keep them going for 4 years. And everyone was just like so stressed about it and so worried about it that, again, like we didn't want to be in either of those situations. We wanted to be self-sustaining and to be able to generate money ourselves to cover our running costs. It's taken a good 10 years of hard work, but at the minute, Print to the People, through its various activities at the studio, is able to earn enough money to cover our rent, our bills, having an accountant, having a part-time admin assistant, and having a cleaner, which is very important in the shared space. And we have a core team of 10 people who will help with the things we do. So none of those 10 people, myself included, are on a salary from Print to the People, but by Print to the People existing as a space, we can all earn money from that space. So whether that's teaching on the course programme or having the space to make our own work in, which we then sell online or in exhibitions. So it's not the most traditional workplace setup, but it works for us because everybody kind of gets out of it what they put into it, and everybody, you know, wants a space like this to exist in Norwich. So that's what they're sort of working towards. It might not work for everyone, but that's how we work. Print to the People has always been able to cover its running costs, but if ever we've wanted to do something extra, that's when we've looked into funding to do that. So when we moved into our building here on Pitt Street, we started a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo and raised £3,000 to cover costs for things like the legal fees with the contracts we had to sign on the building, paint to make the building look nice again, to pay to hire vans and people to help us move all the equipment. So my tips for doing a crowdfunding campaign would be to, you know, research the different platforms and find out which one's right for the project or your organisation. You know, try not to be too like ambitious. You know, it's better to like reach your target and go over it rather than have a really high target and not reach it. You know, look at other people, other organisations or other campaigns that might be similar to yours and see what they're doing. And also, you know, don't forget the hidden costs like the transaction fees, and also if you're doing rewards and posting them out, there's going to be costs involved in that. So, you know, if you need £200 for your project, then actually you probably want to raise like £250 or £300 to cover those extra costs. So those would be my tips for crowdfunding. So when we moved to our new building here on Pitt Street, we felt it was a really good opportunity for us to develop and grow as an organisation. So we decided it was the right time to apply to the Arts Council for funding. So we wrote a project called Print to the People Research and Development, and we applied to the Arts Council for £15,000, which we were successful in getting. And it was real great. It was amazing. We were totally amazed that we got it. And it was just brilliant for us as an organisation because it gave us the space and sort of financial freedom to do things like design new courses. We went on training ourselves. I went on a financial course. We did health and safety training. We did first aid training. And since that funding application, we've also had successful funding bids, again with the Arts Council for 10 grand, also with Heritage Lottery Fund for 10 grand, and with smaller local funding organisations, so like the John Jarrold Trust and also the Arts Project Fund. We've got money from between £250 to £500, and also personally I've got money from the Arts Council through their Artists International Development Fund of £5,000 to go to America and research print studios over there. So my tip for getting funding is to simply give yourself time. Find out when the submission deadline is for whatever funding you want to apply for, and give yourself time. That's time to read all the submission guidance, time to ask for advice, time to get help, time to plan the project, time to write the application, time to get other people to read the application, time to make edits, and then time to submit it. You really don't want to be submitting it a minute before the deadline because that never goes well for anybody. The first funding application you write is always going to be the hardest because you're working out how to describe what you do to strangers, and you're also trying to use all the work out the funding lingo and how you describe certain things. So the first funding application I did for Print to the People, that £15,000 one, that took me 6 months to write because I was reading everything. I went to loads of seminars on how to write funding applications. I wrote the thing, I got everyone I knew to read it, and then I submitted it. But subsequently, the other funding applications I worked on have been so much easier because I already had this sort of template down of how to write about Print to the People and what we do. I can't really give much advice on what to put actually in your funding application because that's going to depend on the project and also the fund you're applying for. What I would say is though, they're going to have guidance that accompanies the funding, so read that and then read it again. In that guidance will be everything you need to know to write a successful funding application, and they're going to have language in there that they want to use, so use that language back at them. If they say we want your project to have social impact, then say in your funding application, my project has social impact in these ways. And then once you've written it, get someone who doesn't know anything about you or doesn't know anything about the project to read it, to see if it makes sense to them and see if they can understand it. Because the person reading your funding application isn't going to know about you and everything that you've done. So it would be good if you could get someone who's in that same position to read it. So 2 practical tips I can give you to do with the budget would be, so always make sure you include contingency funding. So that's normally 10% of your total project cost. And those are for unexpected costs that might occur over the course of your project, and that shows that you've planned for any eventuality and also hopefully means you won't go over budget. The second thing would be to include some project management costs, and this is to pay someone, either yourself or someone else, to sort of run the project. So that means managing the budget, writing the reports, and also managing the people within the project, sending emails, organising dates, all that sort of stuff. Because those things all need doing, and if you're not paying someone to do them, then very quickly the project can be a lot of work either for yourself or for the other people involved. So it's important that those costs are covered. And my final thing to say about funding would be, don't be disheartened if you don't get it. It is really competitive. Some people get their applications turned away just because there were too many people applying for that fund, even though it was a good application. Ask for feedback if they'll give it, make adjustments, make tweaks, and then try again. Don't give up, and good luck with it. Thanks for watching this video. I hope it was useful. If you go back to our website, there's a little sheet you can download which has some links to the stuff I've talked about. These videos are free, but if you feel like donating some money, again, there's a donate button on our website, or head over to our Etsy shop and buy yourself a little treat. These videos have been made possible thanks to the Arts Council's emergency fund, and we'd just like to thank National Lottery players for making that happen.